Hello and welcome to Artist at Work here at Community Focus. I'm Alan Marzullo, your host, and here's where we have casual yet informative just conversations with artists, local artists, and we invite them once a month to come in and talk with us about their work, about their background, and just have some fun conversation. So today we have Deborah Shapiro with us, and who is would you call yourself a
magazine collage artist.
Okay. And it was your background is more is in a similar with videography.
Yes, I did have art back in elementary school through high school, but I graduated in '81, and I didn't think you could make a living really as an artist, and that was before social media and everything. So I thought it'd be a tough road to go down. So I ended up going into the video business for about 35 years until I had a surgery.
And the surgery was on your jaw, you told me.
Yes,
right?
yeah, I had,
So
once I got about 50, I had issues with my teeth, and turned out I had this open bite and I had to have a surgery, and I had 2 surgeries. And as you're recovering, it takes maybe about 6 months, because you have to sleep sitting up, and you can't eat anything solid. So I was on a liquid diet for about 6 months. And my mom just started giving me a bunch of magazines to keep me busy. And during that time, I just thought they were colorful, and I just thought, well, what if I play around and start making art with it? And I kind of used the magazine paper as my paint. And then a couple of years later, I was just so addicted to it that this is what I do now.
And some of your one of your early ones is here as the cat. I'll give you this to show. And what's different about this is your second one, right?
Yes.
First one was a blue heron,
right?
Which you didn't want to bring because you say his head is too big, even
it
though
was,
it's really
yeah.
nice. It's a nice one. But what's different about this?
Well, when I first started off, I've never seen it done before, so I didn't know what to do. So I cut up everything in tiny little squares. To me, that's what made sense. So, and this one wasn't bad. This is what kind of got me more addicted to doing this, because the first one, like I said, I didn't really care for. This one's well, that's kind of cool. And this is our cat, Wilma. She lived to be about 17 years old.
Oh my goodness, that's great.
But what I like was it just looks cool, I think, considering that was all magazines.
Yeah.
And then you'll see even at the bottom, there's some little quotes from Picasso and different people in there. So it makes it interesting. The more you look at it, there's little things that pop out to you. But I did this style of just cutting out squares for maybe about 5 paintings. And then I started looking up online to see what other people are doing. And a lot of people would tear their papers or paint it. So I went through about another 15 of just trying different techniques. And I eventually kind of settled more into my own style, which involves a lot of tearing, which I do now. So I don't really do this style anymore.
And I thought what was interesting that you start in your studio, you organize them by fashion, food,
yes.
So because there's certain colors that you get on ones that are whatever category. The food might have some more brighter, the vegetables and so forth, whereas the fashion is maybe more textures, you said?
Right. Yeah, I have it, I've been doing this a long time now, not a long time, but a few years. So I know where to look for a certain type of things. So greens are really good in food magazines. They have celery, lettuce, different things like that. So I know I can look for that. If I need orange, I know to look in the September, October, November issues, because you'll get a lot more of those colors. Reds are great around Christmas time. You get tons of that in there. And then, like you said, fashion magazines, which I like about those, the dresses and outfits, there's so many different textures to it. So that adds a little bit more interest, because I like for you to be able to recognize different things in my artwork. So you kind of get 2 different experiences. One is from a distance. You'll see the whole thing, whatever the subject is. But then when you get up close, there's a whole bunch of different little things to read and see within all the magazine paper.
Very interesting. And one of the things that I remember you said was that, which you would think National Geographic, oh my gosh, that should be the most wonderful, and you'll be able to call a lot of things out of that in colors, but you said that it's so saturated that it's not
It's hard for me to
desirable.
blend it in sometimes. Someone came to one of my art shows, and they were in the printing business, and they explained to me that there's very limited colors in magazines, and pretty much all the magazines use the same ink set. So you'll notice with all my artwork, if you see reds, the reds are all the same, even though they came from about 100 different magazines. The blues are kind of the same. So I work within a really limited color range. But the thing with National Geographic, apparently they have their own ink set. So sometimes I find it hard to kind of blend in Although I do use National Geographic, but I notice that their colors are very saturated. So it kind of stands out a little bit compared to the other magazines when I put them into a picture.
It kind of brought up some old memories that I had one time. This was way back, and it was a family wedding, and we were outside, and we posed for a sibling photo, and this is bad. They always still tease me about it. My new brother-in-law was standing in the middle, and we never had one of just the siblings. So I remember he was standing in front of a tree. So I took National Geographic and I cut out and I made him blended him into the tree. Took a photo of it. This was way before Photoshop and so forth. So I still have that photo. But every time I hear about National Geographic, especially about inks and cutting the thing, I think about when I made my brother-in-law Butch into a tree. But it's a great sibling photo. So.
Well, basically, we're doing the same thing I'm doing. So
that was my little presentation with it. But so then some of the pieces that you started working with were, when I first saw you at one of the shows, one of the summer shows, was the legs, which is so interesting because it's a series, and they make a special statement. It's just the woman's legs, and go ahead and show us.
So I like doing the legs compared to some of the other things, which is just a cute animal or whatever. But I could tell a story, and I think that goes back to being a videographer. I always had to tell a story within 2-3 minutes. So with the leg series, okay, so this one is the first one I did of it. And I haven't done faces yet, so you'll notice that I cut off the head on pretty much all of them. But I think it makes it interesting because you could imagine any woman in there, young, old, whatever. This one I call 3 Bad Habits. And so can you tell what the habits are?
Well, we got a cigarette here and the coffee. Now the third one, is it because she's crossing her legs?
Yes, because that's bad for your circulatory system. You get varicose veins. And you'll notice on the cigarette it says like toxic cancer. I like to add like little things into that. So that was the first one I did.
And there's some other words and so forth here.
Yeah, I kind of thought she was a little bit more materialistic, so you'll see a lot of little phrases and everything that kind of relate to that.
Rolex watch.
This one, is another one of the series. Okay, and this one I call 2 Worlds. And because I was a videographer for a number of years, I had my own business for about 15 of that. So I would meet a lot of clients at coffee shops. So this is what I imagine. This is a young woman who's an entrepreneur. She's at a coffee shop, you could tell by the coffee cup. And she's doing work on her phone, like looking at emails or whatever. But the background are Life magazines that my mother had in the basement. And they're all from like the 40s and the 60s. And so I looked for ads that show women's roles back then. And a lot of times they're worried about their husband, they're homemakers.
That's the first thing I say, husband says.
Right, they're cleaning. So that's why I'm trying to show there's 2 worlds, what life for a woman was back in the 40s compared to now that she's running her own business.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, you can, even into her shoes, there's some text.
Yes. And that's what makes it fun
people,
when you get up
fun,
close.
Yeah, the more you look, the more you see, and it's just very telling, interesting. In fact, there's even, I think, a family photo up in here in this corner. And
then let's see. This one is probably the more recent one. My husband and I took a trip down to Nashville to see the solar eclipse. I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so this represents that. So Nashville, they play a lot of music, so you're going to see the guitar. It was their 17-year crickets came out, so there's a little cricket on the chair.
Here he is, yeah.
And we stayed at a friend's house, and when we were in the evening, went to the back porch and we were drinking wine, so that's why she's drinking wine.
And there's something in her wine glass that looks like architecture or something around the top of the glass.
Something. And then in the black, I have a lot of circles representing the eclipse that we saw.
Okay.
And you can even see I have like
the buttons and the.
Right, so just kind of repeating that theme, and then above the glass there should be an eclipse that I kind of cut out of different pieces of paper and everything to represent that. And then driving back from Nashville, everybody left. We thought we'd be smart and leave right after the eclipse. Well, apparently so did like millions of other people, and we were stuck in traffic. So at the top of the guitar, there's a little freeway with some cars in there to kind of represent sitting in traffic for hours.
That's great. It was It was still a good experience.
Oh,
I
it
would
was
imagine,
awesome.
right?
It was awesome. I didn't, I never saw one before, and it was the most awesome experience. At that very moment, it's like the earth just stood still, and everybody, you could just feel like everyone around us, everything was just this, it was awesome. And it's coming to Cleveland in a couple of years.
Oh,
so.
already again? Oh,
Yes, I
that's
think it's
nice.
20, maybe 22
Wow, I
or
didn't
24.
realize. We were up we were on our way to Chicago, and we stopped at in the Indiana area by the sand dunes and so forth. And there weren't that many people out, but you knew people were like run to see where, it wasn't a good area for viewing.
Okay,
But
yeah.
people were trying to see something, and you saw, oh, okay, it looked a little bit different. But it was still, like I said, everybody in the area was going somewhere that they could try to find the
Right.
best spot for viewing. But
Did it go through Chicago?
it wasn't. No, where we were, it was just you got a little bit,
Oh,
a
okay.
little bit okay, but it wasn't really dramatic at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's so
I wish
dramatic.
we had gone somewhere.
And it will be coming through our area here, so it'll be, you can stay in your backyard and watch it, from what I understand, next time. So,
So I don't want to ignore this. That's giant peacock
Yeah.
right between us. So, and what was this? Is this in the middle of your process? As far as
Yeah,
a
this
year
is-
or is this more recent?
this is probably about maybe 2 years old. And the peacock, so I do research, because that's what I would do with the video.
Yeah.
So I read up on the peacock, and it represents eternal life in a bunch of different cultures. So I try to bring that into this. So you'll see there's words that say like last a lifetime, forever, life is here today. So there's little things that kind of represent that. Also in one of the cultures, I believe it's India, I could be wrong, they believe that the tail represents the eyes of God. So there'll be little
I see.
eyeballs in there. I have things about Eden, a number of little things throughout there. But it's fun because you'll see there's like a little face, there's
Oh, yeah.
wrenches, there's a hand, a bunch of little things to look for in there. And to make it kind of pop out from the background,
Elevating, I think it says here. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I used tissue paper over top the whites. So the peacock looks like he kind of pops out a little bit more better.
Life is here today. And some of this, it's beautiful. I don't know, she or he, but and I even like the little gingham going on in here to get some variation in this circle too.
And a lot of times you'll find in my artwork, I put clocks or something
I
in
have
there. So a lot of them, probably the last few years, you'll find a clock in almost all of them.
It's different timing. Now this one reminds me of the landscape over here because of the way the
Right, and that one, it has a lot of texture to it because I did put a lot of tissue paper on the background, once again to pop that out.
and you get more the texture.
Right, especially if the light hits it in a certain way, you could really see the texture. And I really try to use that in the water part of it to kind of give it more of the waves and everything. That was kind of an experiment, seeing how that worked out. I don't like doing landscapes very much because it's so far away. And I think if something's really close, then I can put all kinds of little details in there because, like I said, people like to recognize little bits and pieces in there. Landscape, it's so far away, and I have to use such little pieces that you don't get to see images inside the image.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Although I see a lot here, these giant lips here, and
Yes.
so and then again with the
And
patterning and
If you ever watch The Walking Dead, the fingers at the bottom, that's Michonne from The Walking
here?
Dead. Yes, that's her fingers.
I don't know her.
Okay. You have to be a fan of the show.
My nieces were so into it, but I couldn't quite do it. And I see another hand over here. Is this a particular spot that it reminded you of, or is
No,
just
I just wanted to try. I did one that no one will ever see, of a tree, but it looked like I did it like in kindergarten. It just did not come across well. So I wanted to try another tree. And once again, like I said, it's okay. I just don't think the landscapes work as well as other pieces where you could kind of see other things in it. And even like the cliff there, it didn't really come across as rocky as I wanted it to. So I just kind of stick to other subjects.
I get it. It's the cliff. And how about the birds? Were they all one piece?
Yes, those are little pieces I cut out. Everything you see is all magazines on all my work. So those I just cut them out with an X-Acto blade to do that.
I like it. Maybe one day
Okay.
you might try some more landscapes.
Okay.
think they came out good. Let's see, what else we, so another fish, this is so colorful.
Yeah, this, let's see. I think I have it upside
I
down.
think you do, yeah, your signature's down here.
There's really no story to this one. I just wanted to kind of play around with using an X-Acto blade, so you'll see all the fins and everything have really thin little strips. And that's a challenge because as I put it down, it kind of slides in the adhesive, so you kind of have to take your X-Acto blade, kind of stab it, and kind of like keep it in position until it's like kind of tacked down. So this one is really a challenge, trying to get all those little lines, everything to line up just right.
Yeah, there's so many of them with their tails intertwining here.
Right.
And you use acrylic medium adhesive for your.
My adhesive is an acrylic medium, which acrylic artists use, and it dries clear. But that's what I put like on my canvas first, and then what I use to tack down all the paper. And then I put on maybe 3 more layers of it on top when I'm done, and then varnish on top of that. Okay. So that's why they're shiny. So.
And you told me that your process is first you sketch it.
Right.
And then what was the next step?
Well, once I sketch it, then I figure out a color scheme for it. And then I go through magazines, and this could take me many hours, looking through magazines, trying to get those colors. And I'll separate them all into piles. And then when I get ready to work on a piece, I'll work with one color at a time because it becomes a big mess on my craft table. And I'll kind of separate the one color from like light to dark, so I have a palette to work with, and then it becomes like kind of a jigsaw puzzle, trying to piece everything together, trying to get it to work together, to blend together. Like for instance, like the flag in the background behind you, trying to get like, I would have to find like light red to dark red, light blues, dark blues, and trying to hold up them to each other, trying to get them to blend together. And a lot of times, something like that, because it's so big, when you're sitting a foot away from it, it's hard to see what you're doing. So I often have to get up and stand maybe like 10, 15 feet away and see if the shadow is really working as a shadow or not.
And you start with the background and then come to the foreground. Right?
Yes, because I think you can see the paper like overlapping each other. And I think it looks weird if like the background is overlapping on top of the foreground. So I have to kind of really plot out my plan of attack and kind of work from the background and work my way up to the foreground.
And then you also had in your studio, you keep them, like if you have extra blues or whatever, and you have little piles of boxes and so forth that you've broken them out by color. And then when you were telling me when you tear it, whatever color is in front of you facing you is what you want to, the way you want to tear it, because then of course the back side of it gets the white exposed.
Right, it gets like a little white edge if you rip up paper. But I've learned that if you rip it towards you, the piece that you're ripping towards you will have a clean edge. The one that's farther away is going to have that little white edge. And I don't like showing the white edge unless it's budding up to something that's white. Then it kind of like blends in a little bit better. But I prefer to use a part that has a clean edge on it.
And have you ever, like some painters working with acrylics or especially with oils, if they're not happy with it, they just kind of paint over it, scrape it down a little bit and paint over it. For you, in this process, have you ripped off things or?
I have tried. Unfortunately, once it's on there, it really becomes one with it. So if you try to rip it up, you're just going to rip up the piece. And the thing is, I look for like cool pieces to put in there. So sometimes it's really sad when I realize like, oh, this isn't working. And the only thing I could do is cover it up. You can't like save that really good piece that you have. So that's why it really helps to really plot out what you're doing, try to really think, if it's going to work or not. And sometimes I'll just kind of tack it down just ever so lightly, because if it's like such a great little piece, and then stand away and see if it works or not, and try to get back before it like becomes one with the picture. Yeah.
And it ends up being that you can, with that adhesive, it's easier to pull off, like you said, for as
sort of. Yeah, you have a few seconds, to play around with it.
And then if you do have to end up layering over something, it's like this one where it gives you more texture, and sometimes that can work. I guess sometimes it doesn't.
Right, right. Yeah, you just kind of lose out on that piece. But there's so many great things in magazines to put into these things.
Yeah.
So you just got to live with it and move on to that.
One of the pieces that's, of course, is a real departure from some of the other ones as far as subject matter is this one here with the skull, which is very trendy as far as.
Right. I get a number of requests at art festivals if I have
Oh,
a
yeah?
sugar skull. And so I thought I would try it. It's not really kind of my thing. I like to have nice positive messages and all that. And this is kind of a positive message, kind of relates to the Mexican holiday where they honor their loved ones that have passed on, and they have parades, but they also make these like sugar skulls that, into cakes and different things. So I thought if I'm going to do one, it's going to have some meaning. So this one also represents my jaw surgery.
Ah.
So the flowers in the cheeks represents the brackets I have in my face that holds my face together.
Oh, thank you.
And then the ones in the jaw down there, those I have like 3 pins on each side holding the bottom jaw together. So that's what those represent. And then my mother, whenever she would get a cold, would say that her nose would run like a faucet. So you'll find there's a faucet inside the nose.
Oh my gosh, yes, I see. A very nice one's probably a nice Moen or something.
Yes,
right?
it is, yeah. So that's the story
Nice
behind
one.
that. I don't plan to make too many of these, but I always get
I
requests
like
for
that.
them.
And you do prints of your work as well, so that you can
Yes.
sell them easily at the show, so you don't have to do another sugar skull.
Right, yes, I got plenty,
This
yeah.
will be very popular, and
Right.
I love the flowers on the.
But it's funny, you
Brow.
never, at the art shows, they'll see one thing and then they'll say, do you have another one of it? It's like, well, I got a lot of prints of that one, so.
this one took me 15
Right.
hours to do. And now the rooster right
Yes.
behind you. Let's talk about that one. So
Okay, a couple years ago, it was Year of the Rooster in the Chinese zodiac. So I decided that was a good inspiration. So I made about like 7 roosters. And it's probably the last one I have left, but it's also the biggest one of that too. But I really like how it's like that bright, vibrant red and the black and white that kind of pops out with it. And everything you see is all magazine. So like even the eyeball is made up of maybe like 10 different little pieces to
my
create
gosh.
the green and the highlight and everything in the eye. And that one took a lot of thought because there's so much to it. I want everything to sit on top of each other. So, like this leg is farther back, so I had to make sure I put that leg down first. And just, it was a lot of planning, like what feather is going to sit behind what feather as you create it. So it took a while to put
it's
together.
beautiful. I love his feathers and all the different patterns and so forth. They're
And
just-
that was a challenge because that's all cut up with an X-Acto blade, every little piece.
every one of those blade.
Right, and you kind of had to try to layer it and make it look like it's all full. So each one of them is a challenge.
Yeah.
In
In a different way.
right.
And then again with the words and joy obviously right off his back and story and all the other. And again with you said something about the circles. I see a circle like right off from the middle
there's
of
a
it.
circle,
right
and
in
I'm
the
sure
center.
I don't. Oh, here's a clock, kind of a clock,
clock.
down here. Yes,
Yeah,
they're all in
he's
there
great.
somewhere. So,
And now see what else do you have on your side here?
well, let's see. We have this is kind of a newer one. Is a crab, and this one I did a little bit differently. Of course, I did research about soft shell crabs or blue crabs.
Blue crabs.
Yes. So then what I did, I went on like Photoshop and I printed up, I found different articles, so I cut out a sentence or a couple words here and there, and I put it together so it's all in the same font. And then I took it to a printer and had them print up just pages of all these words.
Okay.
And so that's what I used for the background. I would, and then I ripped up what I had, and so it's still in the same style. Now the crab itself is all the magazines, but to create that shadow, I did some of the words on gray, and that's what kind of gives the shadow to the crab.
Okay.
And that was
I see right here.
and that was a challenge too because I had to kind of line up the words in the gray with the words in the white.
Oh yeah.
So it was a challenge to do that.
And then it's all where you might find like Atlantic Ocean, Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
There's Maryland, of course. Maryland's will tell you their boiling makes the found in the beach or something. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure
didn't-
what that was.
I think it's more interesting rather than you reading like an entire article. So
Yeah.
that's why I probably took about 15 different articles and just ripped up a sentence here or there that definitely had something to do with the crabs. But I want people to kind of, it gives you more time to look at it because then you try to figure out what was that, what were they talking about,
Yeah.
or whatever, makes it a little bit
Exactly.
more interesting.
And that's whenever I think of crabs, I always think of Maryland with, and I think they're are those soft shelled or hard shelled. The one they lay out the craft paper on
Right,
the table and then
right.
they give them a hammer, mallet, and just throw the crabs right on the table and they go at it. But I'm not sure if they're the blue crabs or not. But
yeah, I'm not
that's
sure
great.
either on that.
But they're good. They taste good.
And then let's see, over here we also have Save the Bees.
Oh, yeah.
And this, you know, because the bees are becoming extinct, and if we don't have, well, they're not becoming extinct, but they're endangered.
They are, yeah.
And if we don't have bees, we don't have food. So this is kind of to honor the bees. So in here I have like 5 bees throughout the piece. There's a couple at the bottom. But I just, you know, I like flowers, like bees.
Oh, there's one right in the middle pollinating. Yeah, it is a serious issue. And then I see, oh, some of the gardening. This looks like a gardening shirt. Some of the tools. Keys. Yeah. Oh, key to the, yes, to our food. It's great. I mean, it's an intricate story within its, you know, the simplicity of looking at it in the color, and you get the joy from there. But then once you delve into it, it's got the deeper
and
story.
So I never thought about the thing with the keys that you just said. So, and that's what I find interesting when I do art festivals. People find their own meaning. It's like, oh, that's what you meant by this. It's like,
go, oh,
I know, yeah, it was just a pretty piece I put in there. But if you find meaning, great.
That's good.
So.
And you do a good series of shows for especially the summer time, which is.
Yes, I do a lot in the summertime. Get out to different festivals in the area. So I like doing that. I like talking to people, and I like to hear what people say about it, because like what you just said, it's always interesting. Like, oh, you know, someone has a different interpretation of what I do. You know, they think things are very deep.
You get to it. Now this one, okay, here we have one here.
This one I just call Grandma's Window, and it was just to do some more architectural sort of. I was gonna first put like was like siding on there, and I didn't really. I kind of like seeing the bigger chunks of stuff. So, like I said, everyone is a little adventure for me trying to figure out what to put.
It almost looks like brick, like white brick over here.
Right.
And some of it ends up looking like lattice, but it's a beautiful, fresh piece because and I'm sure there's a lot of people that would enjoy to have a flower box. So you don't have a flower box, bring it into your home.
Right. And that was fun because, I mean, all the leaves, everything I had to cut out with an X-Acto blade. So it was a lot of very tedious work to put the flower box together.
And they do look like they're layered on top of each other so that it brings it forward.
Right, and you have to think about that when you put it, you know, what is going to be in the background, what is closer to the person, you know.
And even the little hummingbird up here in the...
Yeah, the hummingbird I like because that's made up of probably about like maybe 7 little pieces.
Really?
And then the shadow itself is made up of a number of little pieces. And since it went across the part of the window, you know, one part would be a little bit darker than the other one. So you kind of have to think about that, you know, the different parts of the shadow.
I like that. You know, I mean, you think about those things with the shadow. You wouldn't even put a hummingbird there, but who would think to have the shadow as well, which, again, it gives it more depth.
Right. And then inside the window, you'll see a dog, a woman, a number of different things in there.
Oh, I see them now.
So it makes it a little more interesting.
There's the dog, yeah. Yeah,
I like dogs.
So. A couple of cute ones. Let's see, what else? Oh, there's the piano in the front.
Right. Want me to pick that
one
up? Okay. This one doesn't have much of a story. I did play piano when I was a kid, really bad. And I still have the piano in my house, and sometimes my husband and I will play like name that tune because I'm like so bad. And I have my books from, you know, the 70s hits, you know, whatever. So he'll try to guess what they are because I'm that bad. You have to guess what it could possibly be. So anyways, this is my piano at home. And it has like a little line of like wood. The wood is like different from where the keys are to the top. So I tried to put a little line, and you can see like even the horse where it has like little vein going through the horse. That makes it different.
We are unfortunately out of time, so
okay.
But I hope we got to some of the major ones that we want.
Yes.
And I thank you for coming. It's fascinating work,
thank you.
I'm sure everybody will look forward to the shows that you'll be bringing them around to. And
yeah, they could go to my website, Deborah Shapiro Art, and there's an event page, and you can find me where I'm going to be throughout the summer.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll welcome you back next month for a new guest artist. And thank you for coming today. Bye-bye.
Thanks.